So, what if I told you that one of the most important global relationships of our time was built on a massive, decades long misunderstanding? That's the explosive argument at the heart of Michael Pillsbury's book, The 100-Year Marathon. It basically claims that America has been playing a game it didn't even know it was in, getting China's true intentions completely and utterly wrong. To really get our heads around this idea, the book starts somewhere you might not expect. Not with some dry policy meeting, but with a piece of performance art. An event, right in Washington, D.C., that the author holds up as a huge warning sign. A message that was sent in plain sight, but then America just, well, didn't see. The story revolves around this man, Kai Go Kiang. He's one of China's most celebrated contemporary artists, and in 2012, he was given a major honor by the U.S. Secretary of State, who praised his work for helping build understanding and diplomacy. And it wasn't just an award. No, the U.S. State Department, using American taxpayer money, actually funded his next big project. We're talking $250,000 for an art installation right there on the National Mall. So what did our $250,000 buy? A daytime fireworks show that spectacularly blew up a Christmas tree. Yep, the symbolic public destruction of one of the most iconic symbols of Western Christian culture. And here's where the two worlds just completely failed to connect. American officials saw it as edgy, avant-garde art, but the book says that Chinese nationalists, the hardliners known as the Yingpai, saw something totally different. On their social media, they were apparently celebrating. They saw their hero, their artist, symbolically destroying a Western faith symbol right in front of an American audience. And that leads to the book's big question about this whole thing. Was this a simple misunderstanding? Or was it, as the author suggests, a perfect metaphor for the entire U.S.-China relationship? One side sending a clear, subversive message, and the other side just smiling and applauding, completely in the dark. Okay, so how on earth could a misunderstanding that big even happen? Well, the book argues that for more than 40 years, American policy toward China was built on a foundation of some really big and, as it turns out, maybe totally wrong assumptions. All right, this right here is the absolute core of it. The American belief for decades was pretty simple. If we help China get rich, they'll eventually become more like us, a democracy, a partner in our world order. But the book's counter-argument is just incredibly stark. It says China never, ever intended to join our club. The plan all along was to replace it, to finally avenge what they call the century of humiliation at the hands of the West. And this way of thinking, this willful blindness, was apparently reinforced by who the U.S. chose to listen to. The book tells this incredible story of two Chinese defectors. Miss Green came along and told U.S. intelligence exactly what it wanted to hear, that the good guys, the reformers, were winning. And guess what? She got funding, support, the whole deal. Then came Mr. White, who delivered a much harsher message. The hardliners are taking over, and their goal is to undermine America. He was basically ignored. The U.S., the book argues, picked the fairy tale it liked better. So all of this, the misread signals, the false assumptions, it all leads us to the book's central explosive thesis, China's secret strategy, which it calls the 100-Year Marathon. So what is the marathon? Well, it's described as this very long-term, very secret grand strategy. The goal isn't just to compete with the United States, it's to replace it as the world's #1 power. And here's the kicker. It has a deadline, the year 2049, exactly 100 years after Mao's Communist Revolution. Now, what's so fascinating is where the book says this strategy comes from. It's not from Karl Marx or Lenin. No, the playbook is much, much older. It's drawn from China's ancient warring states period, a brutal era of deception and long-term strategic thinking that happened more than 2,000 years ago. And this historical context changes everything. For example, when Chinese officials first met Henry Kissinger, they referred to America as the Ba. His translator told him it meant leader, which sounds great, right? A real compliment. But a more accurate translation is hegemon, or even tyrant, a ruler who is powerful now, but whose destiny is to be challenged and eventually overthrown. A huge difference. So this ancient history isn't just history. The book says it's a living playbook. It teaches a clear cycle. The rising power has to be patient. It has to use deception to make the current hegemon feel safe and comfortable. And then, over decades, it slowly builds its strength, waiting for the perfect moment to take over and become the new sun in the sky. Okay, so if this ancient manual is the playbook, what are the actual plays? What moves does the book claim China is using against the United States right now, today? Well, according to the book, it really boils down to a few key ideas, all pulled from that ancient text. First, make the current top dog feel secure, like you're no threat. Win through cleverness and deception, not a head-on fight. Patiently build your power. Steal their technology so you can leapfrog them. And, most importantly, master this concept called Xi. And Xi is a really critical idea. Don't think of it as just raw power. It's more like strategic momentum. It's about shaping the whole situation, manipulating the flow of events, so that your victory becomes the natural, inevitable outcome. It's not about winning the battle. It's about setting up the board so your opponent can't possibly win before the battle even starts. So how does this play out in the real world? Well, economically, the book calls it a capitalist charade. While the U.S. is playing by free market rules, China is allegedly running a state-controlled system. It uses global groups like the WTO to its advantage, all while using massive state-owned companies and, the book says, state-sponsored IP theft to dominate key industries. And then there's the military side. The book highlights a concept with a pretty chilling name, the assassin's mace. Now, this isn't a single weapon. It's a whole collection of secret, asymmetric weapons. And they have one purpose: to defeat a more technologically advanced enemy, like the United States, by hitting its biggest weaknesses. And we're not talking about science fiction here. The book points to China's real development of things like anti-satellite weapons, designed to blind the U.S. military's eyes in the sky. It talks about mastering cyber warfare to create chaos, and of course deploying those famous carrier killer missiles, built specifically to take out the heart of American naval power. So you take the economic strategy, you combine it with the military strategy, and you get to the book's really unsettling bottom line: a direct warning to America and its leaders. To make its case, the book throws out this number: over 100. What is that? Well, apparently that's the number of science and technology assistance programs the U.S. government has helped facilitate for China. So the argument is that America, in its eagerness to help China modernize, has essentially been funding and training its own replacement in this marathon. Which, of course, brings us right back to where we started, with that exploding Christmas tree. For the author, this wasn't just some weird art project. It was the perfect symbol for decades of American naivete, of us funding and applauding a competitor whose real goals we completely misunderstood. As he puts it, the joke, it appeared, was very much on us. And in the end, the book leaves us all wrestling with this one powerful question. It argues that China believes it's in a long-term race that America doesn't even know is happening. So if the 100-year marathon is real, what does the finish line actually look like? And who's going to get there first?